Welcome to Run With Purpose. This is episode number 122. And for those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I'm so very glad that you found this podcast. Would love if you would subscribe. And as always, you can reach out to me on the socials everywhere at flores.run. Hope everyone is having a great week. Hope you had a great weekend. It's cold all over the place here in the Midwest. That's really it. You may notice this background's a little different than what it had been previously, but we're in Minnesota, spending the weekend in Minnesota. Just Kayla's babysitting and doing those things. You may hear it. You hear the noise? Back with the kids again. Just loud craziness. It's when I was working these last few days, I was like, how did I get through this? With all of this noise with all of the kids and everything. But you're like, you know what? You figure out a way and you make it happen. So no, we're glad to be here. I'm glad to see people hang out with some old friends as well, but it's freezing. It's been cold in Chicago, not as cold as it's been here, but still it's cold. Why don't we go somewhere warmer? Hopefully we'll be doing that soon. But other than that, been spending a lot of time resting, which is nice. Still haven't run since Vermont. It's interesting. I was looking at my Strava, they have those monthly recaps with Strava. And I was like, how many runs have I done? And then I realized, I've only did 2 runs in October. 2 runs? 3 runs. 3 runs in October. 2 of those were marathons. And you're like, that's a pretty light month. And then if you even just go to the next day, obviously with the back-to-backs, my last 4 runs that I've done, 3 of them have been marathons, which is that's just funny. But yeah, resting up and really kind of enjoying just the time of hanging out. And yeah, it's been nice to relax. I'll be getting back to it shortly. Just kind of letting the tattoo heal in addition to the process, not wanting to sweat and go crazy with it. So I was like, you know what? Perfect time to rest. But, making progress on the Vermont race recap. If those that have been keeping eyes on it rather, just haven't finished it up. I've been taking my time writing it and that's okay. Those things happen. It's only been, as of today, just right under a month. So hopefully I get it by that month mark, which is next Wednesday, the day after this episode comes out. But if I don't, you can check out the website, flores.run, and see all the other previous race recaps I have. Kayla and I actually went down a trip down memory lane, if you will, looking at old race recaps, looking at old photos and kind of remembering the different things about those races. And we even went to the YouTube channel and was looking at old vlogs and stuff like that, which is another weird kind of throwback to the vlogs that I was making. A lot of just me talking to the camera, which weirdly enough, people liked and enjoyed, but obviously that was just a fad of things people were doing. And my life wasn't crazy interesting for people to continue watching. It was just me running or random things. But some of the race ones are pretty cool that I was able to capture. So if you want to check out the YouTube channel, I think the link's in the bio as well on my Instagram page or on the website, where you can at least click one of the links from YouTube, get over to the channel and check out some of the old things. There's some fun stuff in there. One of my most watched videos in the last 30 days, rolling, and we did me and a friend, Tori, we did a road trip to New York and we just sang Michael Jackson songs. And that gets a big, carpool karaoke kind of thing. People really tend to click that. So yeah, that's good. But yeah, what a time, what are things are going on. But, if you're a long time listener, or even a listener in the last few months, you definitely know about my journey of the 50 states, right? There's always that joke where, how do you know if somebody runs marathons? But don't worry, they'll tell you. And really, that's what I do. But I mentioned in the last episode, or 2 episodes ago, my last solo episode, that the journey had come to an end. I had completed the 50 states, as I was talking about with Vermont. We hit that final finish line, and leading up to that last race, I got a lot of people asking me, well, what are you going to do next? I usually come back with some smart response, what are you, not entertained? But really, people were curious mostly because it seems that I'm always planning to do something crazy. There was always some run that I was doing, whether it was our running beer and BS 50K, where we did a bunch of breweries, or all of my other birthday runs where we hit breweries or different things. And then even obviously the journey as well, hitting the 50 states. And people always knew I was doing something. So I think that's part of the reason why they were asking what was next. And it kind of also ties into people not being able to sit in the quiet, right? We've talked about this on an episode before, really being able just to sit in the moment and always needing to be chasing the next thing, right? This hustle culture. I need to be doing something. If I'm not doing something, I'm not actively growing in a way, which I do believe is true in some senses. But at points, you really just need to sit in the quiet and be in the moment and not always have the next big thing. But once I finished the races, I got a few of the still, hey, what are you doing next? Like, what's the next thing? What's happening next? But the conversation there then turned into additional questions that I hadn't really considered or really even thought about. The questions transitioned from what is next to do you feel lost? And that's the topic we're going to talk about today, is this idea of answering that question of do I feel lost now that I've completed this goal? You know, we'll talk high level of what I think this means. And it's really the idea of feeling lost when you finish something big. And I never really thought about it until the first time somebody asked me about it. And then there was more and more people that were asking me about it. Like, now that I don't have a specific goal or journey that I'm on, am I lost? And I was taken back at first and tried to laugh it off of just like, that's kind of funny. That's a weird way of putting that. But then I was talking to my buddy Chris last night. We went out last night for a beverage and some food, and like how profound that question could be, of like really getting deep into like, oh, that's a deep question. And what does that actually mean? So I obviously was like, I'm going to give this some thought and obviously bring it to an episode, because that's what I do when I think about these things. And I won't give you my thoughts and actually answer that question of am I lost until the end. I don't want this to be about like my journey and do I feel lost or not? But I wanted to break down a little bit of what I think people are asking when they ask this question, and how we can kind of view it from different angles. Because again, it is a very deep question when people are asking if someone is lost. So we'll start with this. We'll wrap up with my feelings, even though it's all kind of my feelings, but we'll bring some other information here. But so if we look at the actual definition of lost, what does lost mean? A simple definition that I found was you're unable to find one's way, not knowing one's whereabouts. There was an additional kind of breakout that was put as very confused or insecure or in great difficulties. So the concept when I'm asking if I'm lost, or if others are asking if you feel lost, is do I feel like I don't know my way? Do I feel like I don't know where I currently am? Or maybe I'm confused or in great difficulty of what next really looks like. I think we can word it a handful of ways, but really when it comes down to the ask, the context of all of it at a high level, it's really because I have finished this goal or journey. Have I lost direction on where to go? Have I lost direction of what my purpose is now that I no longer have, that I'm tied to this, right? Do I not know how to define what I am because I was just lost in what was? I think it can align with purpose and why we do the things that we do, right? We've talked about this before, about what defines us. Are we allowing our goals, journeys, even other people define who we are, so that when we no longer have that thing ends, whether it's ends because we stopped doing or we end because we completed the goal, we end up just being lost, right? You hear it with like parents once their kids are out of the house, right? They feel lost because that's how they wrap their entire life. That's what their identity was wrapped in. Everything that they knew was now gone. And how do they then take the next step? What does that next step even look like, right? And I can see it happening with goals as well. The amount of time and energy that we put into these things, the planning of it all, the actual execution, running 50 marathons, like there's a lot that goes on to this. I was talking with my buddy Mike about it, and he's like, yeah, the physical aspect, like being able to stay healthy that long, but also the aspect of the planning, the travel, the cost, everything involved with that. Like logistically, there's also a lot of things. We spend a lot of time and energy on our goals, and then we start to identify with it, start making it a part of our identity. And it becomes something, it becomes more than something that we just do, right? It turns into who we are. You know, for the last decade, I've told people that have asked about my running, and let's be honest, even people that didn't ask about running, about my running journey and the things that I'm doing. And quickly it turned into an identity. People knew me as the guy who did this thing. I would get introduced of, hey, this is my friend that I told you about that does this thing. And it becomes like, that is the guy. This is him. This is the thing he does. People would always ask me how it was going, how the journey was going when they saw me, because they related the two things and made me that guy, which again is how we associate things as people. We look for those common links, things to remember by, and then we can associate, and it can be good and bad, right? We can associate things with people or then a type of people. And you kind of see where I'm going, of where the bad could possibly be with stereotyping and making judgments without knowing people. And again, sometimes it can be good, sometimes maybe not so much. That's probably a future episode, about association and how people view. But I'll digress. I'll get back on the topic at hand. But the journey we're on can really end up being our identity. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. So when folks are asking me about it, that being the journey, they have linked the journey with my identity to say, hey, these are one and the same. This is you. And there can just be this sense of, that's my main thing. That's the only thing that I'm focused on in life. That's the only thing that I'm kind of going after. Like, yeah, obviously you have a job, you have a wife, you pay your bills, you go to church, you do these things. But with something this large, obviously everything you do is running. And we can make assumptions about those identities and have a belief that it's all or nothing. We've talked about that before as well. We need to have some well-roundedness in our lives. Putting everything in a single bucket is really a recipe for disaster, right? In terms of like interest in goals. I'm not saying about multiple spouses. That's a bad idea across the board. Okay. One of those, that's fine. All of that in one bucket. I would agree with that. But when we're talking about our goals and interests, if you put all of your hopes and dreams in one thing, there is a chance that you can be successful in it. And it can be wildly successful. But more often than not, when you put all of your hope in that one type of interest or goal, you start moving your identity to that. And what ends up happening is, if it doesn't meet the standard that you were hoping to, the whole thing seems like a failure. And it's more than just the goal seems like a failure. You feel like a failure because you've wrapped yourself so tightly into this one thing, right? You see it with like athletes and that sort of thing, right? Where they work their whole lives for these goals, and we get to see the success stories on TV, right? They talk about how they grew up in a not a so great neighborhood, and they were able to make better decisions and use their abilities and really work hard and practice and and you see them and you're like, yeah, that's awesome. They got there. But how many hundreds of thousands of other people did the same thing? And whether they fell just short, or maybe it wasn't the right timing, you were right place, right time kind of thing. And because of that, they just never got to succeed in what that was. Think about the high school quarterback that, is still wearing his letter jacket to the bar, talking about the touchdown in the state championship, right? It's that same idea where we then feel like a failure because we didn't amount to the thing that we put all of our time and energy into. And again, I'm not saying it's not good to go after goals, but you need to realize them for what they are. It's not your identity. That is not who you are. That is a thing that you do. So when I would talk about anything other than running to people, they would always respond with a like, you guys do a lot. How do you find time to do all of these things? As though I'm not allowed to have multiple passions or multiple things to go after, multiple things that actually drive me every single day. So when we sit in that and really go, hey, why are we hyper focused on one thing and putting our identity, that having multiple things, multiple points of interest allow us to spread that in a way that we're not making our identity that one thing. My identity can be as a creative person, but that doesn't mean I'm just doing photo. It doesn't mean I'm just doing video. It doesn't mean I'm just doing the podcast. It doesn't mean these things. It's a part of just the extra work I do. And if we think about that even further, I guess, the things that we identify with really shouldn't be things that we do in terms of activities, right? We shouldn't define our lives or our personal identity with things that we do, but more about how we live our lives and then the relationships that we have around us. Those are things that are going to last a lot longer than the activities that we do. Do I hope that I'll be able to run for a long, long time? Yes, I do. I hope to be that guy in his 80s, if I make it to my 80s, that is running marathons and cheering on young folks as they go through and go through those journeys, right? But I do know that every step I'm given is a gift. And eventually I'm going to have to hang up the shoes. Eventually my body's going to say, stop it. But if I had my identity so wrapped up that no, I'm a runner and this is what I do, it could wear me down. Even these last month that I haven't been running, right? If my identity was attached to that, I would be depressed that I'm not doing this. But knowing that, hey, it's just a thing that I'm doing, it can kind of change the perspective of it, right? I think the last part of this conversation as a whole is the idea of always chasing a goal. The do you feel lost ties in with the, well, what's next conversation, right? The idea of just being able to sit in the quiet or be in the moment is so countercultural. I'm gonna give you something. Take this. You now have permission. It's okay not to have some huge goal that you're going full steam at. It's okay. Especially after a long or taxing journey or goal, a thing that you're doing. Now, I'm not saying be lazy and never do anything, but there are moments in our lives where we need to be quiet and just rest. A time of reflection and rest allows us to get more from the moment, rather than just rushing to the next thing, right? Valuing the experience for what it was before rolling into the next thing. I was talking to someone about this recently, and they brought up the conversation of folks being interviewed after the Super Bowl, after the World Series or something like that. They're interviewing the MVP of the Super Bowl, and they're already asking them what's next. After they already say that they're going to Disney World, after that happens, they're saying, what's next? Where are you guys going to be? And it's like, hey, the clock literally just hit 0. Why don't we give it some time to separate? Why can't I just be in this moment? Then in the next day, TV analysts are thinking about the schedules and the matchups and all of these things and what needs to happen. And our culture is so ingrained. We need to know what's next. We need to know what's next. We can't just sit in the quiet and rest. I need this noise. I need this just ever constant attention on everything to be like, hey, I need to go after this. And I'm just saying, no, just slow down. Sit in the quiet. Have some rest. We need to just sit in the moment. And yes, at some point, if you have these type of reoccurring goals like team sports and stuff like that, you need to get your head back on straight. But we are afraid of that quiet. And I'm not going to do it here because it's bad podcasting. But I challenge you to just sit in silence for 3 minutes. I mean, no noise at all, no music, no interruptions, just a quiet place. Sit in your closet if you have to get away from some of the things. For 3 minutes, just sit there, your eyes open so you don't fall asleep, and just be in the moment. And I can almost guarantee you're going to be going like stir crazy, like, oh my gosh, this time has to be done. Kind of like when you're doing planks, right? And then you realize, wait a second, it's been 30 seconds. And that just shows us how ingrained we are, that if the lack of noise just seems so unnatural. We're used to that constant pressure, that constant noise. And that's what happens when it comes to goals, right? We're always having to strive for the next thing to tackle. But what if you broke that way of thinking, right? What if you took a step back and go, hey, it's okay to just sit in this moment and enjoy what you were able to do, what you accomplished, the goal that you set out and achieved, or even just the journey that you were on in the entire time. What if we changed that mindset and really took that step back? So taking it back to the beginning, when folks ask me, are you lost now? Do you feel lost now that you are no longer on this journey? For the last 9-10 years, you have been running across the country. Now what? Do you feel lost in this moment? No, I don't feel lost. Shocker, I'm sure, from the comments from the whole podcast, but no, I don't feel lost. I'd been on this journey that literally had taken me across the country. From planes, trains, and automobiles to each step along the way in the journey. While the journey had been a part of my life for these past 9-10 years, I don't feel like I've lost my purpose or direction as a human being. This was just one part of my life that I was focusing in on, but I know there's so much more to life than the things that we do, the activities that we partake in. The goals we set and complete don't make my identity. It's not who I am when I do that, but what they do is they add to my life. They add to the growth, to continue having me grow as a person in all aspects of my life. So let's take a moment to just sit in the congratulations. You finished this goal, you finished this journey, you spent all of this time and energy getting to this spot. And when you get there, people will say congratulations. Let's stop there. Let's sit in that moment. Let's not move to what's next. Not yet. Sit in the congratulations and really just soak in what you were able to do. Because I think once we sit in that and can feel that peace in the quiet, it'll allow us that we don't need to feel like we need to add another row to our to-do list in order to be worth something. You reach out to me everywhere on social media at flores.run. Subscribe, leave a review for the podcast. It's super helpful and I very much appreciate it. You check out Hangry Gear at wearehangry.com. But thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to keep running with purpose, one step at a time. See you guys next week.